So yeah, I'm Nicky. I'm based in Malta, but I'm currently calling in from Helsinki. It's an awesome city here. Yeah, I'm a community lead at Interintellect, and I've been in the community since like end 2021. I haven't written a book, and I haven't obviously published anything because I haven't written a book. But I love writing. I love reading people's writing, and I love just discussing anything really. And I'm really excited to have Paul here. And we've got an hour and a half of his time, which is really, really nice. Thanks for joining us. I had followed some of Paul's work on Twitter and like read some of his blog posts in the past. But over the past week, I listened to the audiobook of The Pathless Path. And I thought that was like very timely for me because I'm also trying to figure out how to what stop is next in my path, basically. And I think the next stop is just taking a step back from being employed for someone and just traveling around a bit and spending some time on some like creative interests and hobbies of mine. So yeah, that's a little quick introduction from my end. I'll pass the mic to Kevin.
Sure, I'm Kevin. Grew up in the Bay Area, moved to New York to work at a tech startup. And I think at some point came across Paul on Twitter. I think he definitely planted some of the first seeds of like wondering if there's more stuff to do than sort of this like traditional path that I had sort of assumed I had to go down, going through high school, college, and then finding like a well-paying job afterward and stuff. Yeah, moved back to the Bay during the pandemic, and I think that also sort of helped accelerate my thinking around it, and left my job last year and just been sort of exploring since then, essentially. Just got back from like a multi-week trip to Asia that was sort of open-ended and still trying to figure out next steps from there. But yeah, I think definitely Paul was definitely a big influence on that. So super excited to sort of hear his thoughts on the book publishing and stuff.
Yeah, you want to, or Anne, do you want to go up next? You're next on my screen.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Anne. I live in the Bay Area as well. And let's see, I'm a creative writer, create novels, short stories, poems, also memoir kind of stuff. But yeah, I've published some small stuff here and there, and I just was intrigued by the title of the salon. I apologize, I don't have knowledge about the background of the, of Paul's work or anything else, but I thought this would be useful regardless. I have a few novels that I've got rough drafts of, and eventually, yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out what am I going to do with this work? What's the point of doing it if it's not able to be read by somebody else, So.
Nice, that's awesome. And yeah, there's no background needed. You have plenty of time to get to know more about Paul today. You want to go up next, Tommy?
Yeah, sure, with pleasure. I'm Tommy, and I'm a host of the Tommy's Outdoors Conservation and Science podcast. And podcast is only part of that. There's also I'm doing a little bit of public speaking, and also writing semi-regular blogs for my website, which is kind of like a website and podcast. This is like goes together. And there was a point in time when I was writing a book. I had an idea to write a book. I have maybe about 50% of what I would like to do. And the whole idea from the very beginning was to self-publish that book. And then I was reading books. The guy's name, Alan Weiss, he's probably like some big wig. I didn't know him. And he was in one of his books, he was making very compelling argument that self-publishing book is the worst you can do, never do that. And the whole thing, why? And that kind of like discouraged me. And, writing that book kind of was going like oh my God, like a trying to pull blood out of stone. So I thought, yeah, right, he's right. I'm probably better off writing a few articles, few columns, maybe, feature, and then finding publisher and publishing book through publisher. And so that's how it went. So when I saw this title, self-publishing game, right, that's interesting, and I'm very curious to hear Paul's take on this, and also Paul, you probably heard also all the arguments why you shouldn't self-publish a book, and so I hope that you will have few words to refute those or maybe not those statements. So that's me, and that's what I'm here.
Awesome. That's nice. Olaf, you want to go up next?
Sure, happy to. I'm Olaf. I live in Munich, Germany. That's where I am currently also. And I tend to dabble in and out of these intellectual, inter-intellectual hangouts from time to time. And this one just caught my eye because I had come across Paul somewhere on Twitter, obviously. He's one of several people who were exploring and explaining kind of lifestyle changes. And a lot of that, especially kind of this style, the very kind of unpretentious style, resonated a lot with me. I bought his book. I've read parts of it, not all of it. And I, because he also kind of came from a consulting background. In my case, I'm a lawyer in the finance sector, but not a totally unsimilar situation, except that I'm a lot older. I'm like 55. But there's also this kind of nagging issue of at some point wanting to pursue other projects and kind of leaving the traditional career path. So I wasn't super super concentrated on the aspect of this being about book publishing, but also kind of just to get a sense for Paul, because I really found him to be an interesting person from the little tidbits that I picked up from reading his book and seeing some of his tweets, etc. So that's kind of where I come from interest-wise. But I thought, obviously, writing a book is one of these typical projects that everyone seems to kind of carry around with him as a potentiality. So I thought that would be a good opportunity to also kind of listen out and figure out what he has to say on that, because I just really found him to be an interesting person from what I can tell.
That's lovely. Haider, yeah, am I pronouncing that right? Haider?
Haider or Haider will do.
Haider, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So when it comes to publishing books, I've actually published 4 ebooks. They're based on the topics that I struggled with. So life balance, productivity, developing habits, and writing. What I struggle with the most is with the self-promotion, or trying to build like an identity or a personal brand where I become the go-to person for a topic. And this is especially a struggle while being a generalist. So because I've spoken about so many topics, I feel like I'm the go-to person for different things for different people. Like some people come to me because they see me as a writing coach. Other people come to me because I do user experience design. But then like, how do I build a personal brand with a single sort of Twitter account or a single platform? That's something that I'm struggling with. And I noticed that Paul does this really well. Like whenever someone thinks of unconventional path, they start thinking of Paul, So I'm curious to know, in terms of promotion, as well as how do you own a concept?
Well, yeah. So yeah, do you want to introduce yourself, Paul, and maybe kick off the conversation by like you mentioned how self-publishing is maybe better suited for people who are playing the long game, so maybe starting to write off blog posts and sort of building up a body of work there and funneling that through a book. And in your Partless Path book, you mentioned how the traditional publishing route is sometimes better geared towards people who have energy, like have a lot of energy to put into the actual book launch. So yeah, maybe that thought can sort of kick off a conversation on traditional publishing versus self-publishing, and yeah, we can take it from there.
Sure. Yeah. Great to meet everyone. I think this will be fun, and happy to talk about whatever my path, publishing, whatever. I think what I found is that the idea of a book is a very heavy idea. It is something people attach all sorts of hopes, aspirations, expectations, sort of like how it's supposed to feel, how long it's supposed to take, what it's supposed to achieve, what it's for. And a big part of like my path and how I approach everything and just sort of how I'm wired is to question all those things. And I wrote a book because I felt like it would be fun. So I'm a little crazy in the sense that I really do like writing. Writing is the easy part for me. Everything else is the hard part. So I'm always thinking about how do I design my life around enabling that sort of energy and interest in writing to flow. So really for me, writing the book was a process of time. And one of the most challenging things with it throughout the process was I kept having this question the whole time. There must be more. It must not be this simple. It must be harder. I must need to do things to declare myself a publisher, all these things. And at every step in the process, I think what I was seeking is I wanted somebody to save me and just tell me what to do. But I eventually just sort of went through the process on my own, found it surprisingly straightforward, and was sort of surprised at how simple it is to actually just publish a book. Basically, I finished my book in Google Docs, downloaded it in .doc format and uploaded it to Readsy. It outputs this PDF. I upload that to Amazon, and then like a day later, they start printing these, right? So I had a designer do the book cover, and then they're printing books from everywhere in the world. They handle the printing and stuff. So one of the big questions people have, and a lot of people say this, is like, should I self-publish or traditionally publish? I think that's actually the wrong question. I think it's sort of Stephen Pressfield's resistance of like avoiding actually just writing the book. The thing is, I mostly just recommend people to write. Yeah, it's Readsy. I mostly just recommend people just write for 2 months. No expectation, no outcome. Just experience what it's like to start and open a book project, and then figure out what you want to do next. The thing with self-publishing is like traditional publishing has a very set playbook of how to do it. You have to present a book proposal usually, unless you have a massive audience, and you pitch them on your ideas, and you're continually selling them and getting them to approve your process throughout your ideas throughout the process. I hate that stuff. I rather make zero money from a book and have nobody read it. So I wanted to do everything myself. It was very easy for me to pick that from the beginning. I didn't care about any sort of like gatekeepers or anything like that. A big part of what inspires me is like, I want to be able to do stuff on my own and like then teach others how to do it. So yeah, that's sort of like the high level of how I think about it. So my only piece of advice to people is actually just like open a Word doc and call it like a working title of your book, and just start dumping stuff in there, and just leave that Word doc, come to it like once a week, and just see what emerges. Because a lot of people just get too wrapped up in the other stuff. The thing is, if you have a finished manuscript, a publisher is going to be more interested in looking at a finished manuscript than they are a book proposal anyway, right? Because it's an actual book. And And the hard part is really just the writing and the crafting of ideas and weaving the story and all that stuff. And I just generally think more people should get started, focus on those things, and then see what emerges through the process of trying to write it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense because yeah, you just need to sit down and write, and then when you have some content you've written, you can start to think about how you might want to distribute it. Before we just continue, Khalid joins. I'm going to give them the opportunity to just introduce themselves. So yeah, go for it, Khalid. If you can speak. If not, introduce yourself. Okay, no worries. Introduce yourself in chat. So yeah, like if anyone wants to ask questions at any point, just raise your hand and like the floor is open. So we can take the conversation anywhere really. So yeah, feel free to just raise your hand and ask a question. I'm curious, Paul, do you? So like I find myself sometimes like I can kind of stream of consciousness, right? And it comes really easy. But other times I also just like speaking, and I've started like transcribing what I say more and more often. And I'm just curious whether all your writing happens as writing, or whether you also sometimes maybe go for a walk and sort of just record some voice notes or something, or in the car, and whether that makes its way into your written works.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's relationship with writing is personal, and I think it's a mistake to try and copy other people's approaches. But what's worked for me, and I sort of stumbled upon this early, is actually just having lots of conversations with people. So I had curiosity conversations with hundreds of people around work for 3 to 4 years. My calendar was just open every Wednesday. I would talk to anyone. And it was through that iteration cycle of like talking about the ideas, then like writing about them at the end of that week in my newsletter, and just like continuing that cycle over and over again. That is extremely energizing for me. And I love that. I'm still doing that. I still do like podcast conversations with friends, continue to write most weeks. So yeah, it's that. And like, yeah, just like anyone who writes, I do a lot of wandering, bike rides, long walks, those kind of things to try and inspire ideas.
Yeah, and I mean, I did say like that I record myself alone, but for sure, there's so much stimulation that comes from having conversations with other people and so many ideas. And like part of me has wanted to sort of record some more like conversations with friends and stuff, and be able to like transcribe and pull out little tidbits from that. Because sometimes I just forget to note stuff down in the moment. Khalid's asked, first, yeah, Haider, do you want to unmute yourself and ask Paul?
Yeah, sure. So I was curious to know what Paul has found most effective when it comes to promoting like your work, your book. Or is there like a section of things that worked well together?
So I think my curiosity sort of like chose me, right? And I am obsessed with thinking about work and our scripts and our relationship to work and experimental ways of living and all these things. I love it. I've been thinking about it for practically my whole adult life, even if it was a background conversation. And I've been practicing it in my life for the last 6+ years. So like, I don't know how to solve for that part. But the part that's worked is I consistently wrote about these things for years before putting my ideas out into the world. So from 2015 to 2021, I wrote hundreds of essays. I had hundreds of podcast conversations. I had thousands of tweets. I had thousands of hours of wandering and thinking about these things. I had tons of just trial and error in my own life. And so that, I think, comes through in the writing. And over time, I also built trust with a lot of people. like I didn't try to monetize my writing or any of my personal stuff at all, to the point where the reason I started writing a book is people were like, I feel like you need to write a book. Like, I need to like give you money for something. You're not doing anything to make money. And that was the case for 4 to 5 years. Where I probably made less than $5,000 total from like any sort of writing or exploration with the Pathless Path or work ideas. So it really was a long game. And I think the part I underestimated is when I decided to write the book, I had like 2,800 newsletter subscribers, and that had grown slowly over 3 years. No like major jump. It was just like linear growth. And I think probably 10 to 20% of those people, maybe 200 to 300 people, really liked my stuff. And I'd gotten to know them. I had understood what they resonated with my writing. I liked doing that kind of writing too. And I just really focused on that. When I published my book, I really didn't think I'd sell more than like 500. And I think like there's really no like I did a slide. Did everyone read that deck I put out? I can link to it if you haven't.
Yeah, that was a really nice condensed version of the long essay you wrote as well. I'll drop the link in the chat for those who might have not seen it.
Yeah, and so I really I hate marketing. Like I hate the kind of marketing that's like, you should do X, you should execute this playbook. Whenever I know like something will work is like a hack, I like die a little inside. So I've really had to lean on like what I actually like doing. What are things I like doing? One, I love giving stuff away for free. Like I've loved sharing my ideas. And one of the things I did is just ask people if they'd like a copy of my book. And I didn't ask anyone to share my book. I just would reach out to people. Hey, I actually wrote about some of your ideas in here. I'd love to send you a copy. No expectations. Don't care if you read it or share it. We're just trying to share it. I did a lot of that early on. I'm still doing that. I have like 4 books over here. I'm just sending to random people. I don't send to people only if they have a big audience or influence. That's the traditional publishing game. I want to share my book for free with anyone in the world who wants it and doesn't want to buy it or just likes receiving a gift. So I've given over 1,000 books. And I mean, one of those people was Ali Abdal. He supported my pre-sale with, he paid $50 for the pre-sale. And I just was blown away by that. And I said, hey, can I send you a bunch of print books? And I sent him 10 paperbacks and 10 hardcovers. And he started giving it to people. People on his team read it. And I think he started to see, oh, people like this. I'm going to start talking about it. When I first connected with Ali Abdal, he had like 200,000 YouTube subscribers. Now he has like 4.5 million. And I think the takeaway from that is like, find ways to play long games with people also like interested in similar ideas. And so I've never approached anything on my path ever in a transactional mindset. I don't expect anything from anyone ever. I really just want to connect with people on ideas. And the whole reason I'm on this path is because I was lonely on my previous path and I didn't have creative, interesting weirdos to hang out with. And now there are communities like this. So yeah, that's kind of a long riff on how I think about it. And I think the most important thing is like write a book people like and want to share. So Rob Fitzpatrick, he has a book called Write Useful Books. I sort of adopted some of his lessons. Literally in my book, I write, if you want to practice generosity, you can gift this book to a friend. I think one, it's like I actually do believe like you need to practice generosity, but also like that was like a fun way of like planting a seed in people's heads of a possible action they could take.
I had seen a tweet of yours where you're going around Austin leaving like free copies of your books
Yeah.
in place, which I thought was great. Yeah.
Yeah, I have these cards. I think it's backwards, but this book
okay.
is a gift from the author, and I leave free books wherever I am, and I just leave them around.
I think that's great. I would be ecstatic if I just found a free book, and it'd probably make me at least read the first page, and then if that interests me, I'd probably end up continuing.
I also am proactive with this stuff. Like this is a great thing about self-publishing too, is you can just print author copies and send them anywhere around using Amazon's distribution network. It cost me $3.49 plus shipping to send them. So I just sent 100 to Las Palmas in the Canary Islands for a conference on digital nomads. And it cost me, I think, $3.83 a book because they were printed in Spain and sent to the conference. So $383 to print 100. If you're traditionally published, they actually force you to buy the books from them, which I think is like so ridiculous because they're actually just making it harder for the book to be shared. And you have to pay them 50% of list price. So the book publisher will make a profit in you buying your own book from them.
Damn. Kevin has a question if he wants to, unmute and ask.
Sounds like it was sort of answered just now, actually. But yeah, I was just wondering if Amazon is providing you like free copies essentially for that, or if you're like technically losing money. Although I know that's not really your concern in the grand scheme of things.
No, I mean, let me just show you. I think sometimes like people don't know, like it's like an unknown. I'll just show you what this looks like here. These are my sales. You get like a dashboard, but you just go to your bookshelf and you click order author copies. You pick 10 and then you pick the Amazon marketplace you want them from. Add to cart, Amazon.com. $3.64. I'm also buying baby formula. $3.64. And yeah, it will probably be, standard shipping would be like $4.80. So I'll have these, when does it say? 2 weeks. So I usually just order a bulk copy, and that's pretty much it. And all you're doing is just uploading a PDF into Amazon. It's pretty straightforward.
I had no idea Amazon offered that service, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of things you don't think about. I didn't think about any of this until I was actually doing it. And I realized how easy it was to gift books. So like, even if I send them to a country where Amazon doesn't cover it, the shipping from the US is usually not too bad because Amazon has a lot of deals on shipping. So the max I'd spend on a book is like $5-6 anywhere in the world, pretty much. So I've sent books to probably 35 different countries.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that price is not bad at all. Well, I don't have what to compare it to, but it doesn't sound bad. I'm curious.
And that's just like the raw cost of like printing a book. Amazon's a little more expensive. If you print your own books through like a printer in China, you're probably going to pay like less than $2 a copy for 1,000 copies. But then you need to handle shipping and fulfillment. I'm actually looking at doing a special edition linen hardcover for my book. but you'll have to pay for like shipping and fulfillment, and it's just a little more complicated.
A linen cover sounds like it would feel really nice.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Could you maybe talk a bit about, so in the partless part, you talk about how you approached giving people who might not be able to afford a copy of your book the opportunity to get one, and you sort of you start saying how you initially like had a little like option to claim a free book, and how that wasn't maybe the best solution, and how you moved on to a more personal approach where there's like a couple questions, but there's this like conversation with the person to get a bit of more context and background, and then you would like give them a free book after they go through this process. So could you just elaborate a bit on that and yeah,
So
and like any insights?
that was actually not my book. That was with an online course I run. And that was basically because people that got it for free weren't actually ever opening it. So I was just trying to like raise the follow through rate on what people actually do. And I think the background there is I've been sort of practicing gift economy experiments for 5 years. I read Sacred Economics by Charles Eisenstein in 2017 and really bought into the idea of a gift economy and the idea that like those who gift the most are the wealthiest, and really try to do this in all domains. I did a gift economy experiment with a consulting project where I said, pay me what you think feels right at the end of the project. I did a lot of stuff for free at the beginning of my path. And yeah, so it's been very comfortable for me to like give away a book. I don't have an idea that like every book needs to make money. A lot of people do have a thing. It's like they won't accept a gift. They're like, no, I need to pay you for it. And it's like, art is meant to be gifted to the world. Like the magic of art is in creating the art, right? And the problem of making a living is a separate problem than creation in my mind. So I'll give the book for free to anyone. There's no screening process.
Yeah, sorry, I mixed up the two, your course and the book. Yeah, but I love that whole philosophy. And yeah, I love what you said that like I think art should be gifted, and people shouldn't necessarily need to pay for that. Like if people are willing to pay an artist for what they created, that's great. But yeah, it shouldn't be behind a paywall basically. And I love that. Yeah. Does anyone have any thoughts on what we're discussing at the moment that they might want to share, or some other questions? Feel free to unmute and just hop in.
Yeah, I have a question about this idea of the gift economy, and that sounds awesome. I would like to try that. I'm just wondering how would I pay my bills, because obviously you need some source of an income. And so what I understand, what you said, that it is, I love writing, so this is like your hobby, something that you would do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So you never kind of and you touch on that on the very beginning, that you never kind of have any expectations related to your book and everything. And I totally agree. This is the best approach, and this is the best position to take, which is position I took with my podcast. I love talking with people about natural environment and science, and I'm stoked if the scientists will spend some time talking with me. And I was quite happy of producing that podcast for many years and giving it for free. And it didn't even cross my mind that I can make money on the podcast, let alone trying. So that's all good. But could you comment on situation where people they have a good idea for the book. They have a good idea for the book. It's like something they want to on one hand express themselves creatively, but on the other hand, the investment they're not in a position to treat it like a hobby and invest a lot of time, and like you said, maybe nobody will read the book, right? So there's a lot of people who I think have good ideas, and we would all benefit from them writing the book and other people reading them. But that model that you suggest, I'm afraid, wouldn't work for them. I don't know. I'm just curious of your comments on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has a different relationship to the work that they need to do and with money. I think for me, I was basically just willing to burn my life to the ground to like find the work that mattered to me. I mean, my first few years, I didn't really make more than 30 grand a year, and I lowered my cost of living pretty dramatically. I ended up moving abroad just to buy more time. And I really did as little work as possible, mostly so I could like spend time leaning into myself and writing. And I mean, does everyone have that capability? I don't know, but I knew that I needed to keep the energy of writing alive in my life, and that it was almost worth everything. So yeah, everyone's got to figure out what they need, right? I have a daughter now, and me and my wife, like she sort of is exploring her own pathless path. She doesn't really make money now, but she's still pursuing art and these other things. And for us, the trade-off is we don't have a very expensive life. We don't own a home. We don't own a car. But for us, that sort of works, and we feel like we're thriving. So I don't know. I mean, that is such a hard question. I would never tell anyone how to live or like what they should work on. But yeah, I never expected to make money from writing, actually. But it felt like something I had to do. I was making money from other stuff in 2021, so I felt a little more freedom to work on it, but I wasn't making crazy amount. It was just I was living in Taiwan in 2021, and our expenses were less than $2,000 a month, and universal healthcare, so that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Charles Eisenstein has a lot better thoughts on this. I wrote an essay about like my experiments with the gift economy too. And the other thing I would say is like all my experiments with the gift economy were to test my insecurities. And I felt terrible every time I gave something or gave control over pricing and what people would pay me, and like all the weird feelings of self-worth. What do I deserve? Why am I thinking these things? Do I feel like I'm getting ripped off, taken advantage of? All these thoughts, like that is what I directly tried to work on in those first few years. And that has really helped me just relax a lot more around like money. Yeah, and I don't really care like if my income dips, or I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for that.
Yeah, for those who are in a position where they can maybe like relocate to a cheaper place to live, and yeah, be able to focus on some creative endeavors which might not be bringing in as much enough money to support them in the original place. That sounds like a good idea to do for like a while and see what sort of emerges from that.
I think like maybe I'm not communicating this strong enough. Like I have to write. I don't have a choice at this point. Like this is so core to me. And like writing a book was fun and easy for me because it aligned with something I felt like I had to do, wanted to do, and enjoyed. I know for a lot of people, writing is more painful, and I don't know like what the advice is on that.
And yeah, when you say you have to write, sort of that feeling to have to write comes way before the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of,
Years.
yeah, you're playing the long game, and then sort of, you know, you have to write for, you feel like you have to write for 5-10 years, and then you've got this big connected body of work. Then you sort of like start piecing together in a book. This reminds me a lot of Visa Khan's sort of approach to like putting out a book out there. So having all these interconnected tweets and threads, and and essays and blog posts, and sort of like, you know, over a number of years, so finding these like grander topics, and sort of condensing it into a book, or putting it together into a book. Yeah, outside of publishing, Kevin just asked, how is it getting around Austin as a family without a car? And that's a really good question. I'm planning to go to the US for the first time, and getting around, I can drive, but I've been thinking about, like, it's so car dependent, and like I don't like, even the scale is just so much bigger than anything I'm used to. So yeah, any comments about getting around without a car?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, you could still use cars though. We have a Zipcar membership, and we use Lyft. A lot of people are ashamed to do that with kids. Maybe people judge us, but it sort of works for us. I think like me and my wife are very aligned in like the costs and trade-offs of the things we're doing. And a lot of what we do is test things. So we had a kid, we said, let's just test if we can still live our life. And we live downtown in the walkable part of Austin. We literally live on the walking path on purpose. So we tested it and we're like, oh, it's actually way easier to use Lyft with a kid anyway. And a lot of what we do is walk around anyway.
I'm curious. There's so like a lot of like solopreneurs and like creative people, people making stuff have moved to Austin. Does being there sort of, do you feel more surrounded by people also maybe following a partless path? And yeah, like do you have any comments on like sort of that community in Austin?
Yeah, Austin's been great. I think a lot of my sharing has been coming from a point of trying to find the others. And who are the people like me doing things like this, right? That's Seth Godin's thing. And when you find people like thinking like you, doing things like you're doing, nobody ever asks why you're doing it, right? And so you can move on to the deeper connection and support of each other. And I definitely found that in online communities. I think from 2018 to 2021, I was basically just making friends online all the time. Those conversations, sharing my ideas, Twitter, Substack, etc. Moving to Austin last January, 2022, I think was a really cool alignment with putting my book out there, because there are a lot of people here who resonated with the ideas, and just a lot of people on weird creator paths here. And that has been so important for my journey. I think just like having the in-person camaraderie of different people has been just like so inspiring for me. And yeah, I've never had like the active support from family or anyone that's like rooting for me. So I've had to find that in friends. And yeah, Austin's been great for that.
And there's so many things about Austin make me just want to go hang out there. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts on this topic? They might want to share. I was.
No, but maybe it's not directly on the topic of the books, but what you mentioned, what Paul mentioned that about using like a car subscription. There's a lot of like a car subscription, like in Europe, in the UK. My friend lives in Oxford, and that he says like, I don't own a car, I own a fleet of cars, because whatever
I
he
like
needs,
it.
go for a weekend, they just taking like a smaller car or whatever car that they can cruise. And when we're moving house or need to move like a shed or do some gardening, they're taking van and move. So that's very useful if you're lucky enough living in a place where those things are available. So yeah, just want to comment on that I think it's a very good idea, especially if you live in the urban areas, because it actually is probably also cheaper, because you just don't deal with all the cost of like a maintenance of the car and all these things that you don't really think every day. So yeah, that's the only comment I had listening to Paul. Thanks. Sorry, it was off topic.
And it's sort of how I approach everything. Like, and this is how I approach self-publishing, is that I really try to start from first principles. And it's like, what am I trying to achieve here? I'm just trying to write a book, right? If you're pursuing traditional publishing, you have a package of things you're pursuing, whether you want them or not. If you pursue traditional publishing, you'll have to spend a lot of time focusing on crushing the launch and like building up momentum, building up hype, sending books, and orchestrating everything around a week launch. I suck at that. So I didn't want to sign up for a game I didn't want to play. So it's really figuring out like, what are you trying to do and what's the best way to do it? Could I have sold more books pursuing traditional publishing? Maybe, but I don't even think I could have gotten a book deal. I didn't have enough followers or following online.
That's interesting. That's very interesting what you said, because other thought that I actually had when you were talking earlier, like with your experience with your newsletter and all that, I would think you would get publisher like no problem, like no sweat. At least in Europe. I don't know about the US.
I only had 2,500 subscribers in my newsletter.
Yeah, but you were doing that for years. You had like a body of work that you could show. And I think that any publisher, just based on body of work that you produced, would go like, yeah, do it. And the other thing that you just said, that you need to crush the launch and all.
Yeah, I'd get like, maybe they'd give me like a $10,000 advance.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, I just don't think it's worth it. It's not going to change my life.
No, I understand. And I fully on board with the situation where you effectively, they're giving you something, but then they want something back. And like you said, then effectively, my friends, actually, two of them wrote a book, and like you said, they got some advance. And then once they got the advance, they were getting, I think, like €1.20 per sold book.
Yeah.
But once this money made up for the advance they already got. So effectively the advance was all they got ever. But one other thing, this, like you said about the launch, like crushing the launch, like I would think that the publisher, this is exactly what publisher will help, like with that you don't have to do all this legwork yourself with promotion and like, like that would, at least some publisher, I would guess, that's what they offer in a package, no?
Not really. Most of them will tell you have to do all your own marketing. What they'll
Really?
help with is, what they'll do is basically send your book to other people they've published. And yeah, so they'll help send advance copies. They have the names and addresses of like some top authors. Doesn't mean an author is going to share it. You have to build that relationship on your own. Maybe they'll connect you with like news publications, but you have to do all of it on your own. They don't do any marketing. Maybe if it's a massive book, they'll spend some budget on marketing, if it's like Prince Harry or Bill Clinton's book, but for the most part, they don't really like take a book seriously unless they're giving you $1 million advance. And if you're at that level, it's completely different, like economics and ball game anyway. So
Yeah. Okay, it's interesting. Thank you.
and like Hugh Howey, so his shows, the show Silo on Apple TV now, that's based on a self-published book by Hugh Howey. And he wrote a lot in the 2010s about self-publishing. And basically, like, what people are looking for is they think a publisher will help get them in a bookstore. But the problem is publishers publish hundreds of books a year. And bookstores ultimately want to sell books. They're going to try books from the publisher, but typically they're going to put it up on their shelf for like a month to 3 months. And if it doesn't sell, they're just going to take it down and never sell it in their bookstore again. So basically what you're doing is like giving up lifetime ownerships and rights and 70% of royalties for a chance, not a guarantee, that you will be in a bookshelf for 1 to 3 months. And so if you are going to make more by self-publishing, you will actually have more economic incentive to keep talking about and sharing your book. Right? So if I had traditionally published and I had sold 30,000 copies, I would have made about $30,000 to $40,000, maybe 50 on the high end. And self-published, I'm approaching like 165 in royalties. So like this is a substantial part of my income now. So it's like I'll talk about my book all day now, and people seem to like it. The more that sell and people that reach out, like the more my confidence grows, and like it's like, okay, people like this book, I'm going to be a bit bolder. And a publisher offered to buy my book 3 months ago, so I could have went from self-published to traditionally published. I can always sell my book if I want to be part of the chosen traditionally published crew. Like it was the publisher that published Ryan Holiday. They're going to publish Shane Parrish. They've published also Cal Newport. And I talked to him, and honestly, they were some of the most uninspiring people I've ever talked to. I value my creative energy way too high.
Cool. Thank you.
Were you saying the publishers were uninspiring, or like Ryan Holiday and Cal Newport?
No, you don't get. All they do is promise, like, hey, wink, wink, we'll send your book to our famous authors, wink, wink.
Right. I just want to clarify, because I wasn't sure if you meant uninspiring as in the publishers were uninspiring, or if you had talked to Cal Newport and thought he was uninspiring.
No, they won't connect you to them. Only once you've agreed to enter their network. Maybe they'll connect you, and maybe the other authors will be more likely to talk to you because they're in this network of published books and they want to be like, quote unquote, good author. So yeah, I mean, it's a whole game, and the whole game is designed to make you feel like you're missing out if you're not in the inner ring. The internet has lowered the cost of sharing your ideas with the world to practically zero. Our social norms have not caught up with that yet. I think they eventually will, which is why, like, I don't want to give ownership of a creative work to a declining industry. Penguin's organic growth was shrinking for the last 2 years. I'd rather bet on the internet.
Do you think there's 'cause I'd like to know more about that, like publisher growth, and whether maybe you think there's any, like, did COVID possibly have any effect on people were online more? I don't know, is there any anything that you might have, like, any connections you can make maybe between what we went through and an increase in self-publishing and a decrease in traditional publishing books? Is there something there?
Yeah, so I mean, there was a spike in book sales in 2020 and 2021, but it wasn't that dramatic. Like Penguin shrunk in last year. It looks like they grew based on like some currency and accounting shenanigans, but they shrunk, I think, 3% revenues. So yeah, I mean, it's a stagnant industry. You're not going to attract the smartest, brightest people in the world. You're not going to attract the most creative people in a declining industry where you can't give people opportunities or pay raises. If you think about, and I mean, my consulting and business background helps me think through this, right? If you think about a publishing company, they have thousands of books they publish. They're still making money on books they published decades ago, right? So a majority of their revenue are from books published in the past, right? And they don't really need to do anything to keep those books selling. Like, they're not marketing them. It's just books that keep selling, right? And so a publisher is going to be pretty risk averse because, one, you don't want to blow up the business because you're just going to keep collecting those rents on past books, right? So their whole business is designed around only taking sure bets, not taking risk, not being bold. Whereas as an individual, I can be a lot bolder because I've never made money from books before. I don't have a business model to protect. I don't have revenue streams to protect. I'm not going to offend authors that are also publishing with me. There's nothing. I can do anything. I can leave books on the sidewalk. Whereas, like, the economics of traditional book publishing don't really make sense to do that because it's a pain in the ass to actually acquire your own book from them, which they keep in warehouses and you have to buy for 50% of cover price, which for hardcovers is about $13.50.
There's some similarities here with like scientific publishing too, and those
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Haider has had a couple questions. You want to hop in?
Yeah, so a question I asked previously is the difference between getting support from online friends versus offline friends. Does it make a difference to actually be around people who are doing the same thing as you do, or do you find it sufficient to get support from online friends? And then the other question I had is, do you think there's a way for traditional publishers to switch their business model in a way that they can bet on the internet as well?
Yeah, I think on one, I definitely thrive on both. I think being in the US, I've really enjoyed just being around like the entrepreneurial energy of the US. It's hard to find or find other places in the world or experience it digitally, but also like I love connecting with friends. I have like group chats of solopreneurs and creators, and yeah, that keeps me energized. And I don't really get drained by digital online activities, so I think that's another advantage I have. I think on the traditional publishing perspective, I think that's the wrong question. I think people always think like, oh, are they going to adapt? They're not going to adapt. I think what's going to happen is there's going to be an expansion of different kinds of businesses, hybrid publishers, self-publishing consultancies. Maybe a company reaches traditional publisher status, but like if you're a startup, the economics don't really make sense. Like you're better off tailoring to the talent, the creative, the authors, as a wedge of competing, because you can build a lower cost business built on print on demand and things like that. So what you see is people don't compete directly with traditional publishing. They do hybrid publishing, which is typically lower royalty take rates and more creative control, and then all sorts of a range of experiments around different marketing services and things like that. So I think the future is just going to be more options. If you look at now compared to 20 years ago, the difference is the traditional publishers are bigger, but the pie is much larger, right? The number of books in the world has radically expanded. And I think that's generally a great thing. Self-publishing is always going to have the worst books, but it also has some of the best books too. And that's where some of the stigma is. In the 2010s, there was this scandal of like, I mean, the short of it is basically traditional publishers colluded to fix pricing on digital ebooks. to force Amazon into it. And they did this whole PR campaign through mass media, basically getting people to turn on Amazon. And they did a lot of smear campaigns. Like there's some pretty ugly stuff that went on to make people like link self-publishing with like low status. And I think people are still unlearning that, and people have these ideas in their head that are like, oh, self-publishing is kind of cheap. And it is if you don't care about what you create. But if you put a little effort into it, it can be pretty nice and look pretty much the same.
That kind of flows quite nicely into the question I wanted to ask about prestige. Because like even like we see this in the like scientific community journal community too, where there's this level of prestige when you get your paper published in Nature or another top journal, but we're also seeing quite a few scientists maybe leaving some academic institutions, and like Eric Hull, for example, had said that he's looking forward to experimenting with like different mediums of publishing, maybe like experimenting with Substack and maybe some more sort of dynamic, interactive papers. And so it's great that like people like you and many others are publishing, what I and many others would consider like good quality content, not via the traditional route. But yeah, are there any observations you've made on sort of prestige and people's view on you as an author, or like anyone as an author, choosing the self-publishing route over the past couple of years?
I just don't think about that. Like, I don't know. If people think it's like worse to self-publish, it's like, okay, that's a thought that's in the world. That's fine.
I guess.
Yeah, I think I put out something I think stands on its own and people seem to like. So yeah, that's all that really matters to me. I think thinking about like, what does this say about me and all these, it never ends. People are always going to judge you. People think my path is stupid. I mean, I have a big enough audience that people criticize me all the time online. Most people who are criticizing you don't actually like care about you or ever engage with your stuff seriously. It's fine.
Do you pay any attention to like negative criticism online, or do you just simply ignore it?
If it's from somebody that's engaged with my stuff, I'll listen to it. Most of the time, with online, it's mostly like identity or identity attacks based on what I look like, or people's imagination. Like some people think I came from like a rich family. Sometimes, like I think people just project that. I don't know. That's interesting, but they clearly haven't read my stuff.
Yeah, so sorry, I'm just reading Hayder's comment here.
Oh yeah. Do you ever get your books reviewed? I've never like paid to it. There's like paid services like Kirkus. I've never asked anyone to review my book. Everyone that has done it on their own. I always try to engage with people's comments. If people write about my book, I like to go out of my way and send people a note and just thank them. Those are some of the most interesting. It's not even criticism. I love when people engage with the book and are like, I didn't resonate with this. It didn't make sense to me. It didn't fit for me. It's like, oh, that's great. Because if everything I'm saying vibes with what people are reading, like, I don't know, that's a little crazy.
So as someone who's self-publishing a book, and you don't have an editor from the publishers, and are there any like insights or just approaches you've used to getting some of this feedback and sort of in the drafting process? Yeah, like are there any comments in the like differences in the drafting process and reviewing?
Yeah, I just hired an editor.
Okay, just an
I
independent
just
and
recreated the process on my own, just a lot faster, and I got to have final say. So yeah, I mean, you can just go on like Readsy and look at their marketplace of book people and put out like proposals. You'll get proposals back. It's like, I don't know. I think sometimes people think like the only editors in the world live inside publishers. I don't know. You can just hire people for everything.
yeah, from book covers to editors.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's good to know that there's a lot of editors out there, not attached to publishing houses too. Yeah. Does anyone have any comments or would like to chime in on something, or ask a question?
No, that's me again. It's Tommy again. Listen, folks, I'll have to go, but I just want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you, Interact for organizing this, and Paul, thank you for really eye-opening at some points presentation today. I'm subscribed to your newsletter, so I'm looking forward to connecting in the future. And yeah, thank you very much for that, and thanks everybody.
Thanks for joining. See you.
Yeah.
Paul, I had a question. I feel like I'm just curious more about sort of what you described as like the unknown unknowns. Like, what else did you sort of like? What sort of surprised you along the way?
I didn't realize I could just type my name in like Paul Millard and name my self-publisher. I didn't realize like all I needed to do is like buy ISBNs and I could own the copyright in the book forever. I didn't realize I could just print my own copies of my book from Amazon. I don't know. I thought everything would be a lot harder. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think other unknown unknowns. I think some like books can actually take off over time. I thought my book was like done after like 10 months. And I was like, okay, we'll go to 0. And then it started selling more. That was kind of crazy. I was actually looking Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. He actually did not hit the New York Times bestseller list until I think 10 months into his book sales. And the book didn't really sell that many in the first year. So yeah, books really can be a long game. It's kind of the one thing where word of mouth can take root over time.
Right.
I also did not realize how much it would change other people's like ability to support my work. A book becomes like a token they can hold up and be like, okay, I've liked Paul's hundreds of essays over the years, but like, here's an actual book. Here's support. I'm going to post it. I'm going to tell people about it. People just don't do that with like newsletters or essays. That's why I think more online writers should try to write something that they can put out in book form earlier in the process.
What do you think about sharing sort of earlier drafts of books, like much earlier in the process, and sort of like working in public with the book?
Yeah, I mean, I shared a lot of it. A lot of it was like readapted stuff I had written about before, but just much better. Yeah, cover designer, I found on 99 Designs, like the pro side, where you just like look at people's existing art and say, ooh, I like that. And then you just ask them to commission some book covers. Editors, harder, I think. You just need to try different people. You can try Upwork, you can try Readsy. I found an editor through my newsletter. But I think give them like 10 pages and see if you like their editing.
Yeah.
I had a few people that were just like not great and did not understand what I was trying to do.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Now, does it take like when I think about self-publishing, the thing that kind of scares me is it seems like it's an immense amount of energy to be engaged online all the time, and all that, marketing or whatever. I mean, I love the idea of just doing the work for love and putting it out there, because I mean, art has to have an audience to be complete, but then I'm like, yeah, the promoting and the constant networking and connecting, I
You
don't
don't have to do any of it.
Yeah, really. Mhm.
It's like I didn't think about that while I was writing my book. um yeah, I don't know. I think I would just try not to think about that. Like try to find a relationship with the writing and see what you actually want to do. But for me, it's very in the flow of my life. I like these ideas. I like continuing to talk about them. I run a podcast around these ideas. It's fun. So it doesn't feel like work for me. And I don't do stuff in terms of marketing that I don't like doing.
Related to that point around sort of your lack of problem, I guess, with like being online in terms of like online writing, I'm just curious, how have you found sort of the current sort of Twitter, I don't know, Elon Twitter, Instagram threads, Blue Sky? Have you noticed a change in terms of your like engagement or like where you're meeting people that are interesting to talk to?
I sort of have like a pragmatic, like I'm not naive to things that are happening and like changes and shifts. The thing is, I love sharing ideas. I love connecting with people online. There will always be spaces for that. It will always shift. I used to use LinkedIn for that more, Medium, Quora, Tumblr. I don't know. It's always changing. I don't think from ideology. I think from like energy. So I don't know. I'm not really like making my personal choices based on some like big political wars that are far beyond me. I have a life to live, and I'm trying to stay energized and happy for my wife and daughter, and that's how I make decisions.
Yeah, I didn't mean in terms of like the ideological stuff. I think I just meant more like, have you noticed a shift in like where the interesting conversations you're having are happening? Is it like on Twitter, I guess?
Yeah, I think there's definitely been more of a move to like smaller communities like this and group chats and I don't know. It's always changing though, right? I think Twitter's still pretty solid. I think a lot of people that complain about Twitter just don't really curate their feeds. Like I use Twitter in a very pragmatic way. Like I want to connect with people around the ideas I'm connecting with and who are sharing positively. I mute words that attract negative energy, and I mute anyone that is bringing negative energy or hate or outrage. So like I look at Twitter and it's like, I don't know, kind of delightful and nerdy.
Yeah, I have similar feelings with Twitter too. Like a lot of my friends sort of open their feed and there's a lot of like negative energy. But I think it does boil down to curation. And because I didn't used to use the mute functionality at all. I only started using that like last year, and it really does help clear away some of the the vibes you just don't want to have on your feed. And I've noticed myself recently like started to mute some people who post like these threads of like top 10 tools, or there's like a specific format of thread.
Yeah, just mute them.
Yeah,
it's fine. It's super easy. Every sharing is one of the most generous acts in the world, because it lets people know what you care about, and it gives other people an opportunity to connect, right? And if somebody's generously sharing what they really care about and it turns you off, just mute them. You're helping them find the people they actually want to meet.
Yeah, 99% of marketers aren't using ChatGPT correctly. Yeah, I feel like ChatGPT is used so much by marketers at the moment. Have you noticed? Like as a writer yourself, have you incorporated AI models like ChatGPT into any part of your process? Like maybe not like the writing, but yeah, have you experimented with them at all?
I use it for podcast summaries. It does a nice job of pulling out quotes and themes from YouTube transcripts, but not in my writing.
Yeah, I just started using an app called SnipD on Android, and I've really liked that for podcasts because it lets you sort of like capture and transcribe like a window, and then it does some like summarization using GPT too, which is just really useful. I think there's some similar apps on iOS, but yeah, I've definitely found myself using ChatGPT and similar tools more for like summarization and sort of like highlighting key information from content, as opposed to actually writing. Still feels like a lot of the writing is fairly generic in style, though you can, I guess you can sort of feed it your own writing and have it adapt the style a bit. But do you have any thoughts on, while we're on this topic of AI, a sort of an even greater abundance of content, like written content on the internet that isn't necessarily written in someone's voice, but some like, so I guess like tools like this could sort of increase the baseline quality of writing out there, especially if maybe, English isn't your first language, or even like translating content into different languages. But it also feels like there's potential for us to really like just have so much writing out there to filter through, and find the good stuff that you actually want to vibe with. Do you have any thoughts there, or anyone else as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it raises the payoffs for curation or aggregation. But yeah, I mean, there's more stuff published in a year than we can read in our lives these days. That's just the reality. It's like, I don't have strong takes on AI yet. I don't know. It's fun to watch though.
Do you have how do you approach curation, other than maybe muting specific Twitter users or words? Are there any anything that you'd like maybe to share, or some people might find useful about how you curate content, or get rid of some of the noise you don't want to have come your way?
Yeah, it's really about blocking on the internet. Like our whole world, you have to block out the things you don't want to see. We're being flooded with information in every aspect of our lives, right? I don't want to be influenced by like cable news networks or like outrage or clickbait. So I just do a lot of filtering. I actively follow people that are interesting and curious and alive and energized in the world. But yeah, I have such strong curiosity that I don't know. I always find it very easy. My curiosity takes me pretty deep on a lot of different topics. So I just follow that and see where it takes me.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in communities like II probably share very similar with their curiosity leading them down interesting rabbit holes. We've got a couple more minutes. Is there anything someone might want to share, or even you yourself, Paul? Maybe you have a question for us.
I think what I would say is like, let me see. I will open the first draft of my ebook. So I called it an ebook when I started, maybe to lower the stakes. This is not the title I use, Finding Freedom in a World Obsessed with Work. Basically, when I started, I basically created a book. This is just a Word doc. And I just created like headings and chapter titles. and I dumped in a bunch of stuff, and I just wrote for like 3 to 4 months. This is another heading. And then I use this navigation pane over here to the left, and I can go to different chapters. This is the one I had, I think, about like a quarter of the way through writing the book. And you can start to see like the shape of the book. It definitely took a very different form at the end, but I was just like dumping stuff in and sort of making sense of what I had. And I would encourage people just to do this. And then you can do like just insert table of contents at the front, and you get a sense of like, okay, what are the high level chapter titles? What are the ideas? And I don't know, just keep the file open. Maybe it takes 5 years, maybe it takes 2 years, maybe it takes 6 months, but I would just start the file. You wouldn't be in this meetup if you didn't have some interest in writing a book. So just open the file, create some chapter headings, start playing around with the format, and see what emerges.
And you said that's in Word? Is it a special format or
No, I just use Microsoft Word. I think
And
I
it has the-
formatted some of the fonts with like the
Okay.
headings, but yeah.
Oh, but I saw like the little publishing, like the cross marks on the corners. I mean, is there a special setting to get a book form?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
I think that's just in view print layout.
Okay.
Yeah, and then view navigation pane, turn that on, and you can kind of see all the chapters and stuff. I mean, some people use like Scrivener and stuff. I haven't really used it. I like to keep things pretty simple.
I think that's really good advice. And you saying that just made me realize that I used to approach writing like essays at school, or even like essays in an exam, like very similarly, where I would start from so like just these high level, like what needs to be spoken about here, and like basically end up with a little table of contents of the essay, even if it's a couple hundred words, not like a book, and then sort of like work top down. And I hadn't made that connection before. So thanks for that. Yeah, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed this, and I hope you did too. Just 2 more minutes. If anyone has any like parting words or anything they'd like to say to Paul, now's your time.
Yeah, I want to add something. I feel like some things Paul is mentioning is like something that I've wanted to do, and hearing Paul is as though he's giving me permission to do it, you know, because I've always thought like I have to do marketing the way marketers are telling me to do it, or I have to do it the way people have found success in it. And hearing Paul say, do what feels comfortable to you, is like as though he's giving permission for me to do that. So
Yeah.
thank
That's great.
Yeah, that's amazing. This was really like insightful and motivational. And yeah, now I just want to have like start a few notes with different ideas I've had for something I might want to write and like collect into a book in the future, and haven't started doing so yet. So yeah, and I hope everyone else also leaves this conversation feeling inspired to write, and worry about distribution later on. So yeah, thanks for this, Paul. This was great. And thanks everyone for joining too, and engaging in the discussion.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Have a good day or evening. And yeah, see you all in another salon.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.